Hi, Alice here. Let's talk about a best way to enhance or replace turf in your yard, the Powderpuff way. What am I talking about with Powderpuff? Here's a plant. The flower looks just like a Powderpuff. This is a ground cover. I've got a situation in my yard when we get a heavy rain or we had the hurricane and the downpour. I've got a video on that. The water runs across the yard. We've got runoff problem, and with it, some of our sandy soil rushes and washes across the yard. It takes some of the sandy soil with it, and the soil washes down into a road that runs along the side of our property. What options do I have to fix this problem? Because I want to save my soil, I want to have a nice landscaping, and I want to make sure that I'm following Florida friendly things, that I'm helping with water and not having to put in a lot of hardscape that's expensive or things that are not eco-friendly. I've come up with an idea, investigate ground covers and how they would work in my yard for handling this problem. My goal in this project is to find a solution to the erosion problem that I have and to do it nature's way. There's some criteria that I have for what I want in a ground cover. First and foremost, I wanted some plant that was associated with erosion control. I didn't want to just shoot in the dark. I wanted something that when I looked up the reference information, it would be clear that this plant is useful in erosion control. I went to the University of Florida, asked IFAS website, and found information on ground covers and on this powder puff called Powderpuff Mimosa. Second, I wanted a plant that would be low maintenance. That's my mantra, low maintenance. I didn't want large watering needs to maintain this plant. It needed to be able to be mowed and thrive along with the turf grass, be able to intermingle with it. It didn't need a lot of fertilizer. I didn't want to get into a situation of lawn fertilizing, pest control, having the yard sprayed for all kinds of insects and other kinds of issues. Third, one of the most important criteria, it had to be appropriate for my USDA hardiness zone. My zone is 9A, and the plant that I chose needs to be hardy within that zone. I don't want an annual that I'm having to replant. I want a long-lived perennial. Fourth, I have a lot of sun in various parts of my yard. I've lost some trees from storm damage, and I want to be sure that this plant is hardy at full sun conditions, which would be 6 to 8 hours or more per day. And if there are parts of my yard that have part shade conditions, a plant that could adapt to both conditions and thrive. Next, I needed a plant that could hold up to light walking on it. And I didn't have to cut walking paths in my yard so I didn't tread on this plant. By light walking, I walk around with the garden hose, or I might walk out to inspect a plant. I'm not going to park cars on top of it. I'm not going to play volleyball on top of it. I want to be able to occasionally walk around and not have to worry about this plant being damaged if I do that. Next criteria, since I was putting it in my yard, I wanted it to be an attractive plant. Flowering would be great, it could be pollinator friendly. That would be great. I wanted it to have a nice leaf structure and coordinate with the turf grass growing in my yard. I thought, you know, there's this Powderpuff mimosa growing in the park where I do volunteer work. Let me take a closer look and see how it stacks up with my criteria and if it's something that I want to use in my yard. Here's some examples of Powderpuff mimosa, also known as sunshine mimosa, in our local park here in Madison County, Florida. The leaves that look like fern, a nice green color, and the nice contrast to the green of the grass. It's an example of the ground cover being able to commingle with the turf grass that was already in place. Up close you can see the beautiful little powder puffs in the grass. This mimosa has spread. I think it's going to be a good fit. Located a local and I bought some for my yard. Let's see how it's going to turn out. It's time to get planting. Got my plants set up. I have 5 that I'm planting in this area. The first thing I'm going to do is measure the distance, 2 to 4 feet between each plant. Then planting can begin. First plant, I've measured, and now I'm going to cut into ground around my plant. So this first one, and then I will just do all the other ones afterwards. I'm going to make a circle around it, and if I encounter roots, I will be cutting those out. There were some old trees in this area. I got out my loppers and my handsaw in case I need to cut roots. As I suspected, I've got some roots. You always encounter something unexpected when you're gardening. And the other thing I wanted to show you was the soil. So the soil, not only is it dry, but it's really sandy. See how it just kind of sifts. We have some loam in it. That's from years of having trees and leaves fall in the yard. That makes it easy for roots to spread, but it also means that the water runs through, and you need plants that can handle drier conditions, just like the one that I'm getting ready to plant right now. I use my hand pick. This is one of my best garden tools, so versatile. I use the sharp end of it. Some people use this other end, but for me, it's more difficult to work things that way. I need to make my hole as deep as the bottom of the pot, but I don't need to make it any deeper than that. I want it to be level with the pot. I take the soil out and it just kind of slides back in because of the sand. I'm going to loosen a little more soil at the bottom. This, when I take it out, will be about level with the soil. So let's see how the roots look. Pot bound on the bottom. So I'm just going to slice that little bit off the bottom. And now my plant's going to go in. It's already started to spread and twine, put out new roots. I'm going to fill in all around it. I use my fingers and I press down on the soil to make sure that all the air pockets are out. And I want to make sure this is about level with the soil around it. Now, one thing that could expedite things is if when I dug the hole, I would put some water in the bottom of the hole. I neglected to do that this time, but next hole I will remember. Time to water. Sometimes I use a hose, but I like to hand water when I can. It's going to take a few soaking to really soak in. Sometimes with the sandy soil, when it's really dry, it develops this hydrophobic tendency. You would think it would take up the water right away, but it doesn't. So you have to be sure that you have patience and that you continue to water, that it actually soaks deeply into the ground. It's mulched in. I use a mini pine bark nugget. That's good because this prefers slightly acidic to slightly neutral soil. And the mini nuggets, as they break down, will help maintain the pH of the soil in slightly acidic range. I'm going to plant the other ones. I'll be monitoring them for the success of this project. Of course, my situation may not be identical to your situation, but there may be some information and tips that will be useful when you're considering what to do in a similar situation. And we'll just see how it all turns out. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please like it. And if you think there's someone who might be interested in the information, please share. If you've had experience with this plant, so please leave a comment below. And please subscribe. See you in the next video.